The biggest difference between Justice and Mooney is Justice has a higher name recognition, but really it's their patronage. Jim Justice is being backed by the various forces that are associated with Mitch McConnell in the Senate. I think it would be safe to say that Mitch McConnell, if he had his druthers, would just have Joe Manchin switch parties. That would seem to be a lot easier. But with that not likely to happen, then he will certainly take somebody that very much cuts a Manchin-esque figure, a former governor who is popular with the people and will be amiable on a lot of the same issues that Manchin is, but has an R next to his name. Mooney, on the other side, is backed by the Club for Growth, a strong super PAC, that an organization that has put a lot of the Freedom Caucus members into the House of Representatives. He is a member of that and makes for more of an ideologically stout candidate, whereas Justice is a former Democrat. But then again, it's West Virginia, where that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as it does everywhere else in the country. My name is Justin Robert Young, and I am a political commentator and the host of the Politics podcast.
This is a race that's not going to get that is going to get a ton of attention, not only here, but nationwide. And could you talk to us just a little bit about why that is and why this is such a key focus for especially Republicans coming up in 2024 and their path to the possibly taking back the Senate?
You know, this is one of those races that is almost more interesting for what happens outside of the final result, because West Virginia is a state that in 2020 voted for Donald Trump over Joe Biden by nearly 40%. That is among the highest in the nation. It is obviously a very conservative state, and yet it has a Democrat serving it in the Senate. So the question would be, if Justice or Mooney wins this primary, what does Joe Manchin do? Does he run this out? Does he take one final shot at keeping his seat as the state gets ever redder? And this is not going to be a favorable landscape for him like it was in 2018, where you had high Democratic enthusiasm. Or does he do what has been hinted many times, and that is possibly run for president, possibly running for president under the No Labels tag, an organization that is trying to get ballot access on all 50 states? That, to me, is the biggest, most interesting question mark surrounding it.
And I'd really like you to elaborate on that No Labels party that seems to be courting him, that you've spoken about previously.
Yeah.
And exactly, for our viewers who aren't familiar with that, tell us a little bit about that.
So this is extraordinarily DC, and I apologize to all the good people of West Virginia that you have to understand the machinations in our nation's capital. However, No Labels is an organization that's being put together by a lot of very, very, very rich people who want to influence both the Republican and Democratic Party from what they see as a run to extremism. And so they have a pledge saying that if the nominees for the Republican and the Democratic parties are too extreme, they will run a third-party candidate, and they have enough money, and they are currently in the process of trying to secure ballot access in all 50 states, therefore making it a well-funded and formidable third party that is trying to recruit a big-name, nationally known, center-of-the-road politician. Joe Manchin has made it his mission over the last year to talk about how he is not just here for the Democratic Party. He's not just here for the Republican interests that obviously populate his state. He is there to make common sense decisions. That makes him attractive to an organization like that if they do want to go forward. And maybe for Joe Manchin, if the only other decision is taking a loss to either Justice or Mooney, then a bit of a Don Quixote tilting at windmills would be a fun way to sort of recede from the public figure.
How do you think all of that plays into some of the things Manchin's been doing recently, specifically going after his party in the way, as he said, I believe on Sunday, that they broke their word related to energy spending and the Inflation Reduction Act?
Joe Manchin not only has had a disconnect from the Democratic Party, he held up a lot of the stuff that the Biden administration wanted to do. He was the key vote on pretty much every element of Biden's legislative record that he is going to run for re-election on. So the fact that he has found himself disentangled from them ideologically is not really a surprise. Let's remember, it was not but a year and change ago that Joe Manchin was having protests being organized by Democratic-led groups at his houseboat in D.C. He was being chased around the country, much like Kyrsten Sinema, who was standing by him on that particular fight for Build Back Better. This is a divorce a long time coming, if indeed that is what's happening right now. But the fact that he is talking unkind about the party is not much of a surprise to anybody who's been watching this deteriorate in slow motion.
West Virginia, continuing to shift to the right electorally, as you mentioned before, and especially with dissatisfaction with Joe Manchin. I found one Morning Consult poll showing he has the second lowest approval rating of any senator, behind only Mitch McConnell. But as we all know, Mitch McConnell won re-election. So how does that bode for Manchin, regardless if he were to face Jim Justice, Alex Mooney, someone else who gets in the race late? Does he really have any chance of being reelected if he chooses to try to do that?
Well, let's go back to 2018. Donald Trump had been elected in 2016. The resistance movement was something that certainly had captured the media's attention. But in terms of electoral politics, it just meant that Democrats had more momentum. Normally, the opposition party does well in the midterms against the party in power. You saw candidates like Beto O'Rourke come very, very close to unseating Ted Cruz in a Republican state like Texas. And Joe Manchin, who has a tremendous name recognition value, is somebody that knows West Virginia politics like few others, coaxed people like Nick Saban out of his fairly non-political lifestyle to cut an ad talking about how amazing Joe Manchin was, won his reelection effort by a little over 3 points. That's not a huge spread for somebody that has the kind of financial advantage, name recognition advantage, and political expertise as Joe Manchin does. At that point, it felt like there was a 6-year ticking clock on him being able to stay in the Senate from that state, unless he switched parties. And tick tock, we are about at the end of it.
Shifting back to the GOP side of the race, what, in your eyes, do you see as the key factor in deciding the nomination? Does it come down to simply who Donald Trump endorses? For reference, he endorsed J.D. Vance in Ohio. J.D. Vance has deep ties to Appalachia, and he, it seemed to make a difference in his primary, whereas Trump's endorsement, and then J.D. Vance obviously won the general, I should say, but Trump's endorsement did not make the difference in places like Arizona, Florida, Pennsylvania, nearby Pennsylvania with Mehmet Oz. How do you see that playing out?
Well, one of the things that we have to remember about the 2022 midterms, especially in the 3 races that you mentioned, is that all 3 of those candidates were political neophytes. They were making their first run for political office. J.D. Vance in Ohio won, but Blake Masters and Dr. Mehmet Oz, television personality, did not. And part of that is because 2 of those 3 didn't run great campaigns. They weren't able to connect with their voters. They weren't able to identify who they needed to turn out. And that was that. Also, let's remember that of those 3 states, only one of them went for Donald Trump in 2020, and that was Ohio. So J.D. Vance, being a political neophyte, was still able to beat a fairly game but ultimately outmatched and outgunned campaign from Tim Ryan. In Arizona, which went for Biden in 2020, and in Pennsylvania, which went for Biden in 2020, that was not the case. Both of the candidates here in West Virginia are no stranger to politics, nor are they a stranger to who they want to get endorsed by, nor are they a stranger with each other. So Jim Justice is somebody that has won statewide. Mooney is somebody that obviously is very well versed, at least in West Virginia politics. So who Trump endorses will be interesting in that he has no love lost for the old crow, Mitch McConnell, nor does he have a lot of love lost for Club for Growth, which on different occasions has either been his best friend or his sworn enemy, as they have put money both for and against Trump-backed candidates. I just want to highlight again how amazing Joe Manchin as a national figure has been. He is somebody that you would think is a politician without a home, and yet he seems strengthened by the more there are outside people who hate him and who want to yell and scream that he is making things worse in the country. And if you think about what a third party candidate is going to have to deal with in a politically polarized world where everybody who runs third party is just going to be an excuse to get the person that you don't like elected, you're going to need somebody like that. And so my opinion is that just by temperament, I could see Joe Manchin just being a rare individual to be able to step into the spotlight and very calmly have the same conversation he always has with Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, because he's used to the pointed questions, he's used to the pressure, and quite frankly, he's used to the hate.
Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us for a little bit here. I hope everything goes well with your podcast and all the other projects you have going on. Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me anywhere that you find podcasts, politics, or you can search my name, Justin Robert Young. That is Justin like the Timberlake, Robert like the Blake, and Young like the adjective.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this. I hope you have yourself a fabulous week.
Thank you very much.